Hi, my name's Steve Franco. I'm the theater arts instructor here at GLENVAR High School in Salem, Virginia. And I'm sending this video to ask you for your help. Help in providing us with money and equipment that will allow us to turn an unused, useless, empty space into a powerful learning tool for our students. Students that are in band, students that are in theater arts, students that are in choir, our special needs students. This is a project that would allow each of these different groups special opportunities that otherwise they wouldn't have. There are lots of different ways that we can measure a person. Sometimes we measure them by their physical stature, or perhaps we measure someone by their wealth or by their income. But I've found that as a teacher, the one thing that you can never, ever fully measure is a student's heart, a student's will. And what this would do was provide our students with opportunities that they don't have. There are lots of constraints upon students at GLENVAR High School. It's one of the smaller schools in the state of Virginia. We average about 100 students per grade level. We're in one of the larger school systems in the state. There are 28 schools in our system. There are 5 high schools, with GLENVAR being the smallest. As you know, when you tend to have larger systems and larger groups, the larger ones get most of the funding and most of the attention. And that's pretty much the case here. We have students that have a great deal of talent and a great deal of ability. They're not constrained by that. What they're constrained by is budget and opportunity. And I'm asking sincerely that you please take a moment and consider our plea. I ask that you take a moment and say, how can we help? How can you lift lives? In this video, I'm going to show you some of the ways that I think that can be done. GLENVAR's a lot like, I suppose, the majority of other schools in the United States, in that there's often a focus solely upon athletics, while the arts tend to be overshadowed by athletic accomplishments. And there's certainly nothing wrong with athletics. I help coach our varsity football team, and I help coach our soccer team. So I understand the role for each, but as you're well aware, arts funding tends to decrease where other areas don't necessarily suffer. During a recent renovation, a space was set aside at GLENVAR High School for the purpose of being a recording studio. But when it came time to trim budgets, the room was built but never filled. We have, as you can see, an empty space here. It's a good space, a space that was well designed. It's a great size. Acoustically, it's a very good space. But unfortunately, it generally tends to hold leftover band equipment, broken chairs, desks that no longer function properly, rather than being used for its intended purpose, which is that of a recording studio. And it's in that state simply because we cannot afford to buy the equipment needed to use it for its intended purpose. If we were able to do a recording studio in this space at GLENVAR High School, it would benefit our band students. It would allow them, while preparing for state competitions, to record individual pieces, then to take those pieces home and practice as a whole, even though they're only individuals. It would also allow our band students the opportunity to create their own music as projects in and out of class. There are other music students in the school as well, those individual musicians who play in different garage bands. Some of you probably did that at some point in your career. These are students who have a great deal of talent, but they don't have an outlet. There's not a means for them to take their talent and record it, to use it in various ways. A lot of the students at GLENVAR High School that play guitar, that play bass, that play drums, not necessarily members of the marching band, but musicians of other types, would greatly be benefited by the opportunity to come in and lay down different tracks, to start to understand music on a deeper level than they currently do. This would also benefit my actors. I have a number of students that are often required to turn in audition pieces as part of their college portfolios. They would be able to go into a recording studio and do that. They would also be able to lay in voiceover tracks for projects for other classes. They would be able to use the recording studio to lay down voiceover tracks that we could often use in our plays as well. But not only would band students and individual musicians or even actors benefit from this, but naturally we have our group of singers, the musical students here at GLENVAR, and we have a great deal of talent in those areas. These are students that often appear in state competitions and are required to turn in audition pieces ahead of time that are recorded. Most often it's done simply using a laptop and an external computer. The sound quality is very bad, and the students aren't truly showcased for the abilities that they have because the audio isn't accurate to the talent that they possess. By having recording equipment here at GLENVAR that would allow us to change that. Another group of students that would greatly benefit from this are our special needs students, those that have mental challenges. And the recording studio would allow them a great opportunity, the chance not only to perform out loud, but then to hear themselves upon playback and to see their own talents showcased in a special way. As you can see, there are no shortage at GLENVAR High School of students who could benefit from us having the recording studio equipment, having musical equipment, and having software that would allow these things to be manipulated. The shortage is in the equipment itself, and that's what we're asking for. We're asking that you please consider making a donation that will allow us to turn this useless, empty, dust-gathering room into something that could truly change the lives of students for generations to come. Thank you. I'd like to leave you today with one last story, one more thing for you to consider as you're thinking about whether or not funding this project is something that you would be willing to do. It's the story of a young man that I encountered very early in my career. At that time, theater arts at GLENVAR High School wasn't very big. I didn't have a lot of students, but I did have a lot of free time. There were other groups in the community that were looking for help. One of them was a group called OM, stands for Odyssey of the Mind. It's a small group of gifted learners that get together and compete on a local level, then a state level, and then eventually at the national level. It seeks to develop imagination in students by connecting the artistic portion of the brain with the more analytical side. One group called and asked if I would be willing to come and help them with a little musical that they were going to do. I came and met this handful of students. They were all about 12 years old, and they were all very talented. Extremely bright students and good in their own right. They worked through all of the acting that day, presented their scenes for me, and included in the scene was a very brief song that was written by one of the students. He composed all of the music, he composed the lyrics, and as a group they performed it and did an amazing job. They actually won at the local level and went on to state competition about a month later. That's where the story gets interesting. At that level, when they were being critiqued by the judge simply said, "I'm sorry, but I cannot pass you on to the next level because I believe that this music is too sophisticated to have ever been created by a 12-year-old student. I'm sorry, but I don't believe that this is your work." And there, with big crocodile tears welling up in his eyes, this young man gritted his teeth together and looked up at myself and some of the other folks who had helped along the way, at all of the parents who were upset for them, and he said, "I'll show him. One day he'll see, he'll know my name, and he'll know that it's my music." You do know his name, and you do know his music. That little 12-year-old boy grew up to be Ross Copperman, an extremely accomplished young man with a tremendous amount of talent, and a man whose potential is limitless. Ross grew up coming through the GLENVAR schools. He had the same lack of opportunity that my current students have, but he had a great deal of will, a great deal of desire, and he went out and he sought out people who could help him learn to do what he can do. You know how immensely talented Ross is. You know the type of work ethic that he has. Can you imagine how much farther along he could possibly be in his career at this point if he had had the opportunity that I'm asking for you to provide for our students? If in the 7th grade, rather than in his freshman year of college, he'd been exposed to different recording studio equipment, different methods and techniques, different forms of software and sound manipulation, can you imagine where he would be? There's an entire generation of students here at GLENVAR High School who will be the next music makers, the next folks who will be churning out hits and doing it at a phenomenally high level of talent and ability. I'm asking that you sincerely consider funding this project, allowing us to train up the next generation of Ross Coppermans to make an impact on this world. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your consideration. I sincerely appreciate you. God bless.